Welcome to another episode on the Coach Turf podcast, and it's another World Cup 2026 episode. If you've watched the first one, fantastic. Hope you've liked it. If you haven't, feel free to do so. This is the second one of a series of videos. We don't know how many there'll be. We don't know what's going to happen, and that's what makes it exciting. And when I say we, I'm joined once again by Colin Reid. Hi, Colin.
Hi, Daniel. How are you?
Yeah, feeling good, feeling fantastic, even though the weather outside is, well, it's not the best, but hey, summer's approaching and looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, as you can see, I'm outside. The weather's lovely. I'm hoping I don't get arrested by displaying this flag, as there seems to be one or two unpatriotic people in the country, including the Prime Minister. So hopefully he's not looking at my garden and he doesn't drag me away during this podcast.
Well, hopefully not, but England, 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 and we will be talking about England a little bit later on in this episode. However, start off with, how have you found the way the tournament has started? We're a few days in. Some nations have played, some are yet to play. What are your thoughts, your initial thoughts of how it's begun?
Yeah, like I said to you initially, I thought there was too many teams in it, which in one way is not the greatest. However, it makes for a spectacle with lots more games. So, like I said, it's nearly 6 weeks of games, and as you just said, rightly so, we've got our underway. As we're sitting here now, it's Sunday, and the opening game was interesting with the hosts, Mexico, beating South Africa. To be honest, I thought South Africa were very, very poor, but it's always good for the host nation to get us off. So that's fantastic. So, yeah, that was the opening ceremony, all the rigmarole that went with that, which was good. And then obviously to the other hosts game, and we talk about Canada. So Canada's draw with Bosnia, as I understand, was their first point they've ever got in a World Cup tournament. So, yeah, for me, it's been a good start. I think it's, in terms of the games, that's fantastic, but there's always a bit of controversy, as you know, as we saw last night. But, just talking about that Group A game and Group B game gets us off to a good start. So, yeah, initial thoughts are good. Obviously, I've got other games to talk about, but back to you. What are your thoughts on the opening ceremony and the opening couple of games?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It was good, as you've mentioned there, Mexico. They'll be very happy to come away with a win from that first game. It's always very good for any side, but especially I think for the host nations, whoever they are. Canada. For Canada, it's always going to be. I think it's one of these nations that they'll see how it goes, but of course they've got ambitions as well. And we'll see how they go. They might be a tad disappointed that it was just a point from their point of view. But then again, at times, Bosnia and Herzegovina, they can play football as well. They've shown that. But then again, you look at the other host nation, United States of America. The USA. They'll be absolutely buzzing with their win. Very convincing against Paraguay, I believe it was.
Yep.
And I think that just shows the growth of football in the States. I think they showed a lot of fight and will, and I think Pochettino's gone in there and he's done a great job so far. He's doing a great job with the team, and I look at it. I'm actually quite intrigued to see how the United States later on in the tournament progress. I think they will, obviously, and they've got this win, so it's a very good chance that they'll progress from the group stages. But if they have to play, for example, a stronger team, how will that go for them? But no, there's a lot of good results there. I'll quickly mention before I hand it over to you again. Scotland. I mentioned Scotland in the last video. I'm curious to see how they'll get it on. I'm happy that they won their game. Okay, maybe not like it wasn't a 5-0 or a 7-0, but a win is a win, and they'll be buzzing. How did you find those games? Or
Yeah, well,
some
as you say, we want the home nations to do well because it keeps the interest up in the respective countries. And obviously, because it's being hosted by three countries, obviously Mexico got a win, and like we said, Canada got a 1-1 draw, and the United States beat Paraguay 4-1 very convincingly. So it's great when the home nations do well. And I think if you look at how it was devised, I think it was always devised and picked out that, you know, you don't have to qualify through qualifying rounds, so you automatically get through. And I think that the way it's been done with the 48 teams, and out of the groups, that 8 third places will go through. So it is an inevitable that those nations will go through. But coming back to Scotland, Scotland's had a 1-0 win in the early hours of this morning. I certainly didn't watch it. I got friends who did, and I spoke to them, and they said although they won 1-0, they wasn't very convincing. However, the most important thing, as you said, and rightly so, is the result. So I think that Scotland will progress. They've got 2 very difficult games against Brazil and Morocco coming up. I'll talk about those in a minute in terms of their 1-1 draw. But yeah, Scotland have got those 3 points. So I think when you get 3 points, the confidence going into those next 2 games will obviously help them. But, you know, I was on the understanding that they scored a deflected goal, and I'm pleased for them. But I understand they was under the cosh for long periods of the second half. But when you look back, history will tell you that Scotland won 1-0, and apparently there was scenes of jubilation after the game from all the Scotland players celebrating with the fans. So, yeah, like we said in our first podcast on the World Cup, that Scotland will always celebrate, win, lose or draw. So last night or early this morning, England would have been a fantastic time for the Scots. So, yeah, we'll watch them with interest. And knowing that they will be playing Brazil and Morocco, and I watched that game, and like I say, you can't win the World Cup in the opening game or two, as you know. It's about progressing and getting better as the tournament develops. Looking at that, Brazil didn't look at their best, as we know. And, you know, Morocco sort of to get that late equaliser from I think it was the header, wasn't it, from the cross. You know, let's be fair, Brazil had opportunities, but as games go, it wasn't the best. But like I say, I think when you start the tournament, nobody wants to lose that first game. Not saying you can't win the World Cup, because it has been done twice where people have lost their opening game and gone on to win it. But like I said, in terms of confidence, it gives you that chance to grow, and in the second game go out and get that sort of result. And now Scotland, like I say, have got a good opportunity, because I think they play Morocco next, and if they play well, there's nothing to say that Scotland can't beat Morocco. But what they will have to do is put in a lot better performance than what they put in their initial game, although they won it. So for me, the next games are really important. But going back to your Group D, where we talked about USA and we talk about surprises. But for me, Australia beating Turkey 2-0 is a fantastic result. We know Turkey are not the side that they were. But like I say, for Australia, the old Kangaroos, to get a 2-0 victory is fantastic for them. So for me, yeah, it's par for the course. No real shocks, but the most, if you like, surprise result so far is, you know, that 2-0 win for Turkey over 2-0 win for Australia over Turkey.
That was a surprise, no doubt. I mean, before the game, you know, I was looking at it, I was fearing, you know, because I got to admit, there were some years when I was looking at Australia, and I always looked forward to Australia playing, and I was always intrigued. This time a bit similar, but then again I thought, do they have a chance? And I'm glad they showed you know, character in that game, because you have to show character. So it's good for them. Before I kind of mention what I want to about those games, the Brazil and Morocco game, I just like to ask you, you know, from a coach's point of view, about a player like John McGinn. How important is a player like that to a team?
Well, players like John McGinn, with all that experience, and like I said, he himself was the first to admit that he was disappointed in previous campaigns. And I think you get to an age and a stage where you go, this is it. we don't know how long he's going to be playing for. We don't know if Scotland are going to qualify for the Euros in 2 years' time. But when you've got someone so influential, and I looked at it actually, an article that they did on Sky Sports quite recently, where he actually said that he thought he was going to play out in the States about 10 years ago, 10, 11 years ago, and it didn't quite materialise. And I think it was red tape that stopped him going through, because I think he was looking to get a move out there. So when you've had somebody like him, and obviously what he's done recently and what he's achieved with Aston Villa and winning a European title, like I say, is vital, not only on the pitch, his influence and the way the players respect him. I think it's off the pitch. He's had those experiences of going to, uh, tournaments, but not really doing what they should do. So for me, let's hope Scotland perform better. We'll look to see them get out of the group. And I think if they achieve that, then that will be the first time they've ever progressed from the group stages um, a finals. So if they go through, but he's going to be vital to them, and let's hope that he stays injury free for the remaining 2 games, knowing that they probably will be under the cosh. And the way, for me, if Scotland are going to win, is going to be like a set piece, and he's generally involved in those. So yeah, I think that those experienced players they've got in the side, it's a new experience for a lot of young players. So just to be around and have such people in the dressing room is going to be a calming influence to those younger players.
I definitely agree. I mean, any time, even like for Aston Villa, I find that the team isn't as strong, isn't as good. When John McGinn plays, I think there's something that he brings to the team. He's not a flair player. He's not going to be your skills player with the step overs and all that. But for me, he's that player who brings that that fight, that kind of that grit, that grind almost, and he can pop up with a goal. He can pop up with an assist. He can say what needs to be said. I think he's that character, as you said, off the pitch as well. So yeah, those kind of players, unbelievable for a team. Now I want to just want to mention something about the Brazil game, and I think this is a point where you can also look at Morocco's goal as Allison came out in that moment. Yeah, I think, I looked at that and I thought to myself, did he really need to come out that far? And it's also like from a coaching point of view, when you're coaching kids or youths, youth players, to get them, being mindful of where you are. Because in my opinion, that kind of simplified it for
Yep.
the player from Morocco. I mean, once the ball gets to him, I can't remember who scored the goal for Morocco, but he's got a lot to do still. But because Alisson's come out, he's kind of almost made that decision for the forward play, for the striker to get
Yep.
that goal to set off. Because if he had stayed a little bit back, I think then that might have not gone in. But I mean, these are those kind of moments that I think a team, well, Scotland, of course, in that group. I think basically Scotland, they've played the game that they were looking to win. If they get anything like a draw, for example, from any of those 2 games with Morocco and Brazil, I think that's going to be a bonus.
Yeah, I
Um,
think I think
I
so.
think
You're right there, definitely.
I'm hoping that we're going to see a good performance from Scotland as well in those games. But as you said, I think they're going to be under the cosh as well. I agree with you there. Are there any other games that have stood out for you, like maybe from a tactical point of view, or any other that have been played to this point?
No, I just think that, like I said, just going back to what you said about coming out, and I think that's the one he got it clipped over him, didn't he?
Yes,
Um,
yeah,
Sometimes goalkeepers, if you haven't been in the game for a while, you're a little bit tentative, and you might say that he was in that no man's land, and he made the decision up rather than maybe getting there, not realising I'm not going to get there, staying and make myself big. But like I said, who am I to give it those sort of advice to those sort of goalkeepers? But like you say, I think when players are composed and people rush out at you, then they make your mind up where you've got to get to that situation where you maybe put the brakes on, and then you put the onus back on the striker to say what you got in your locker. You know, you're going to go round me on or shoot past me. So, but no, just talking about the games, and I'm looking because it's really interesting. I've put the games down that are going to come this evening, and not in too distant time. So we've got Group E starting. So we've got Germany, and excuse my pronunciation, playing Curacao. And later on, midnight our time in England, Ivory Coast are playing Ecuador. So another group starting. And I think once you've waited to play, there's nothing better than getting out there. I mean, England will be sitting there going, you know, we're still prepping. And there are some advantages to that because you've got that extra time to acclimatise and work on more things. But sometimes it's best just to get your game done and get it over. So I look forward to watching Germany. I never mentioned Germany in the run up because having been out to Germany and being out to Bayern Munich to go and see how they do things out there, for me, um, I always look at the German football as no frills, like you just said about McGinn. McGinn's no frills. He's a grafter. He puts a shift in every time. I look at the Germans and I look at cars, and I've said it about cars. I've had Italian cars, and my brother's got an Italian car, and they're quite temperamental. They're nice when they go well, but if you've ever owned a Ferrari, when it goes wrong, it's expensive. And I look at the Germans and I look at their cars. Look at the Audis, the BMWs, the Porsches, and you can drive them every day, and they're not too high maintenance, you know. And I look at the German side, so no thrills. They're all sort of hard working. They're very organised. They keep it simple. And when you look at Germany, primarily it's get the ball up the pitch, get it wide, get crosses in. They don't overplay. They don't try and play their way in every time like some teams do. So for me, Germany have always got a chance. And no doubt they'll get out of the group, looking who's in their group. But, you know, it's how deep do they go into the competition? So they have got some players playing in um, some good teams around Europe. And for me, like you say, I love watching the Germans. You can bet your bottom dollar. They did go back a few years ago and they experimented playing a back three, but you can bet your bottom dollar they'll play a 4-2-3-1. They want to get the ball wide. They want to get crosses in. So you talking about formation and systems. There's no been real surprises in our team set up as of yet. And also another game that's tonight, and I'm going to watch both of them hopefully, and that's the Netherlands. I still call them Holland, but Netherlands are playing Japan, and Japan's my sort of one of my outside favourites, if you like, someone to watch from a distance. So that's for me is going to be a really intriguing game from a tactical point of view. And from a technical point of view, because as we know, the Dutch are generally very good technically, as are the Japanese. And it's whether the Dutch, for me, can have that discipline, because I think sometimes they can be unbelievable on their day. But as we've seen in tournaments going back in a not so distant future, that there can be a little bit of loss of discipline within the camp. And that's something, you know, culturally that you look at and you go, can they keep it together? Or are they going to have one or two that sort of lose that discipline and puts them in a predicament? But like I say, that game I'm really looking forward to. I think both of them groups, Netherlands and Japan, will go through. And obviously, there's going to be 8 third place playoff spots available. But the other game that you would be interested in as well, that's 3 o'clock in the morning English time, 4 o'clock tomorrow morning for you, is Sweden and Tunisia. And knowing that Sweden were the team that beat Poland in the knockout stages, in the qualifiers to go through, that'll be an interesting one. And obviously with an English interest as well, in that Graham Potter, as you know, is the gaffer, the manager of Sweden. Again, Sweden are a very physical side. They've got some good individuals. Um, you know, primarily they went from back to front very quick, going back. But now they may have a different way and a style and approach to the game, knowing that Graham Potter's influence is out there, and knowing that, you know, I think he started his career as a manager, coach out in Sweden, and he has a good understanding of the culture, the philosophy of Swedish football. And yeah, generally looking forward to those games tonight. What about you?
It's as you say. I mean, Germany, for example, yeah, they have definitely had years where they've struggled. That's for sure. I think the last real one I can remember where they did not struggle was like, well, I think 12 years ago when they had that unbelievable World Cup. That, for example, that 7-1 against Brazil. I think that was one of the rare occasions when I actually thought, you know what, this team deserves it. And of course, I would have preferred it to be England probably at the end of the day winning it. But, I thought to myself after that World Cup that, you know what, Germany deserve it at the back then. And but then they've had some years where they've kind of struggled where that maybe not style, but that way of that German discipline, that way that made Germany always this team that you could never write off, write against. They're always in the conversation. And I think they're still looking for that. They're still looking for that. And yeah, today they've got this game that they should win. It could you never know. This game could end on paper. It looks like it could end like could be the highest score to date. It could be. Then again, it could be one of those games where it just doesn't click.
Yeah,
You know. But then in the rest of the tournament, we'll see. I'm I can't say I'm curious to see what Germany do, to be honest. But you can never. Yeah, I didn't mention them in the last video as well about among the potential winners. I still think they're some way off the German team. I think they've got some. I think what they need is, and I think this tournament might show it. I think they need to look at the back five that they're going to have, and I think Kimmich is going to be playing sort of like almost a right back kind of position because I think he can play there.
yeah,
But I think players like that or Neuer, I think that these are players who are kind of like slowly coming to that point where there needs to be a change. I think there needs to be that for German football. Um, so we'll see what happens. And then you mentioned the Netherlands and Japan. I'm going to be honest. I wouldn't be surprised if Japan won it. I mean, teams like Japan that they're capable of very being very energetic, very disciplined. You know, so Netherlands. To be honest, I think they're also in like a position where they're not quite there. I don't think. I think they've probably got even more work to do, in my opinion, than Germany. So that doesn't really feel like Netherlands will steamroll everyone. It's not that kind of Holland team. I think there have been teams that Holland have had that you looked at them when they had likes of, for example, Iron Robin. Now you don't. I don't get that from them. And then you've mentioned Sweden, of course, against Tunisia. Well, this game's going to be for anyone. I think I wouldn't be surprised if Tunisia ended up winning it. I wouldn't be surprised if Sweden ended up winning it. It might be a draw.
yeah,
Um, I'm going to be honest. Then there's a game, Ivory Coast, because I'm looking there. I can't remember everything. Got my phone here. Ivory Coast and Ecuador. I
yes,
think this one's going to be one where we can. I wouldn't be surprised to see Ecuador winning this. I think they've got some. I think they've actually got some players who can make a difference.
yeah,
Um, I really do. I think Ecuador could in this game. In this game, I think I'll just take a look. Yeah, okay. Group. They're in Group E. So Ecuador are with Germany and Curacao, I think it is.
that's correct. Yes, yeah,
Yeah, I think Ecuador will get through that group. I think they've got enough. I think they've got enough. They've got some players there who had good seasons and they're at top clubs as well, and they've got that quality. Ivory Coast, I don't think they're as strong as they used to be.
yeah,
Again, they're another nation used to have this amazing group of players. Now they've got players, but I still think they're lacking. They've got quality, of course, but they are
yes,
lacking. So
yeah,
as I said, with these four games that we got now and tomorrow morning during our night, depending where you are, Nothing really like stands out. Amazing match for me. To be completely honest, there is a match that's coming up apart from the England game against Croatia on Wednesday. That's going to be the Portugal Congo game. That's one that's really intrigues me. But
Yeah.
as for these games, the ones that we're going to have next, we'll see how it goes. I mean, as I said, I don't think we're going to get any fireworks from any of these sides. I think we're going to just see good football. Then again, as you mentioned, Japan, you never know. Japan might be one of those teams who actually, turn up, show real class, and a lot of energy. So that's probably my thoughts on those games.
Yeah, I think just to go back to what you said around the Dutch are very inconsistent. They can be very, very good, or they can be very, very poor. And that's what I'm saying. I link that to sort of cultural stuff and attitudes of players. Whereas, like you say, you've got a given with Japan that that's not going to be an issue. And it's certainly not going to be an issue with Germany. But going back to Germany, Germany went through a transition when they didn't qualify for the knockout stages 2 World Cups ago. That's when I was in Poland. I can remember it vividly, coming out the bathroom, and Germany didn't qualify. So there was a big inquiry into the German Football Federation and what they needed to do. And I think what they did, they looked at their under 21s and they changed and made some very sort of big changes, root and branch. And I know that they come over to England. They was impressed with what was going on in England. They was impressed with St George's. I think they even come and viewed it to have a look at it. And like I said, when I got my invite to go over to Germany to sort of give my ideas and thoughts on, you know, what I thought around the coaching. So I went over there to give mine. And I think that you look at people and, how they coach, the coach education and the coaching of the players. And, some countries even, going back to Spain very much years ago went to this very much like, and we've talked about it recently, sort of, what do you think? What do you think? But now they've gone back to how it should be done. And we need to look at those countries and how they coach, how they develop their coaches. So, yeah, there's lots of different ways. And this ultimately affects the national team over a period of time. So once you have a sort of style of, developing your coaches or what you think the methodologies are around that, that in time is going to affect your players, and they will then take time to come through the system. So I think what we're seeing now in some of the countries is them evolving and moving on, where others are still, in twixt and between. And I think we've got, going back to England, bring it back to England because we'll talk about the side if we've got time, is we are, for me, we've got a lot of good players that are coming out of what was done previously. I'm a little bit worried about what happens in the future in 10 years' time in the UK, if I'm honest, when I'm looking at sort of, the numbers of coaches that we're producing, the number of coaches that are being represented in both the Premier League and the Championship, and, the number of English players that are actually starting games in the Premier League. And I don't think it's going to be long to where if we don't produce those players, then we might have to select players from the Championship, which would be really worrying. But no, at the moment we're in a golden spell. Hopefully we'll change round what's going on behind the scenes in terms of producing coaches and producing players, and then we'll get back to hopefully topping the success we've had of late.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I mean, something's got to be done for the future. Certain ways of coaching pathways got to be, maybe got to be addressed. Certain things may have not, are not as they should be. But that's maybe a conversation for a bit of a different episode. Maybe something around the coaching pathway. We will see. So yeah, that might come up. But coming back to the World Cup, I don't know if you've noticed, if you've watched anything, not just on the pitch, but stuff that's happened around the pitch. Have you noticed anything in the early days that maybe you
Yeah,
like?
yeah, it's interesting the water breaks. It's interesting to see that we got familiar in England with adding on 8-10 minutes per game. So they're going to add on 3 minutes per half, but they've only added on a minute or two maximum that I've seen. So it just seems strange that you go from refereeing in the Premier League where you're seeing as much as 8, 10, 11 minutes added on in the games, and very noticeable that they've had a 3 minute break, so it's going to inevitably go to 48 minutes, but they've only been adding 4, 5 minutes on total. So in essence, only adding on a minute or two per game. So there's no coincidence for me that that's to do with the duration and the weather, because the ball's out of play equally as much. And there's been some interesting rule changes about you've got 5 seconds, I think, from when you pick the ball up, not from when the ball goes out of play, to make a decision. So I've seen one or two that have overturned. And then obviously we've seen that VAR incident. But yeah, just going back on that one, I think that looking forward to England. I don't know if you want to talk about this now or whether you want to continue it when we pick up again. Do you think we should discuss the England and what I think will be the starting 11 for Wednesday?
We could do, but just before we do, um, because I think this will be in one episode. So, if I could just ask about your thoughts ahead of there are going to be some more matches before the England game. We've got Spain and Cape Verde. You've got Belgium, Egypt, Saudi Arabia,
Yes.
Uruguay, and Iran, New Zealand. What do you think about those games?
Well, like Spain is a big interest to me. I know they're playing Cape Verde, and I love watching the Spanish play. So obviously the Belgium we haven't spoke about as much. I think they've had an ageing squad where they've lost players. So you know, for me, all the games coming up are exciting. But like I say, in the early stages of the knockout, in the league aspects of the World Cup, it's not always so thrilling. I think as the game progress or as the World Cup develops and progresses, then I think you start getting the better games in the last 32 and certainly the 16 and quarterfinals. So, but no, I should watch Spain. Like I said, I think we're going to do a tactical analysis on England's game against Croatia. But I'd also like to do that with the Spanish, so the next time we maybe talk or the time after that, we'll be able to look at the tactical analysis and strategies of the games. I think Spain just go out and play. They don't change too much for other people. They're that dominant that technically and tactically they're very good. They'll play 4-3-3 with one holding mid players and two advanced. They'll play with width. They'll play with a nine that stays up the pitch and doesn't drop deeper than and comes and get the ball off the two centre halves like we do. But it's one way of doing it. But for me, the Spanish are the dream team to watch. Now, hopefully, they will go on and win it. But like I said, there are other teams that can challenge them. But just watching the simplicity and the structure, whereas everyone says they're so fluid and they move about, they don't in other areas. They're very, very boring. They're very, very predictable. It's not until they get into that edge of the final third that they come alive and they flow and they sort of rotate, and the movement's phenomenal. But like I say, let's just see over the next couple of days what happens, and definitely looking forward to England's game against Croatia Wednesday. And like I say, I think in my mind I know who he's going to pick and select, and there might be one or two differences, but yeah, ultimately I'm pretty positive that I could pick that 11 out.
What we'll do now for us, in a moment we'll have a short break, but for this episode it will continue, and then once we return, we'll talk about the England's game against Croatia before we end this episode. So that is coming up. Well, as I said, in a moment. So we are back. We've just had a short break, but for you, this is just smooth sailing. I'm going to be concentrating on England. We were supposed to be talking about England's next game, how we, how we predict it, how you predict it. So, how do you see England's first game going?
Well, hopefully we'll get a positive result, and a positive result ultimately would be a win. And like I said previously, a draw wouldn't be a disaster. But I think because we're playing Croatia, and like I said, they've got an experienced side, and there's been a history over the past three tournaments, I believe, where things haven't always gone our way. But yeah, they've got some very good players, as you know, and it depends how long those players can keep going for. Modric, I think he's nearly 40, or he is 40. You've got Kovacic and you've got Perisic, and you've got Vardiol. So there's some decent players in there, and it depends on the day. But I'd like to think that we've got too much for them with our energy and our athleticism. But let's make no bones about the Croatian side. They're a very good footballing side, technically and tactically. They're very well drilled, very well organised. Primarily, they've played 4-2, sort of 3-1. And they have even played a back three, gone like a 3-4-3, 3-4-2-1. But I think they'll go with a back four, and I think they'll go 2-1. So it's going to be interesting. But I like to think that we can get a result, and if we can get a result, then I see both teams progressing through the tournament. But I think it puts you in a better spot if you actually win the group, if I'm honest.
I think if England play, the way the way we can, the players got top quality, some of the best in the world. It's not to say that Croatia don't have top players, because they do, but recently they've had, I know friendlies are friendlies, and I know it's not always a true, it's not that, okay, that's how the team is, different players and all that, but they did play Belgium and they've played Slovenia, and those matches did show something. But then again, England in their matches, they weren't exactly. I think the recent one was, we mentioned that in the first one. It was just before the Costa Rica game, I believe. It wasn't exactly the type of result that would say, wow, England are going to be smashing in goals. But what I do think we'll see from England is, I think we'll see a lot of professionalism, which you do expect from any team anyway. But I do think that we've got players there who can change games, and it's not just Harry Kane who can get goals, and I think that's the joy for us
Yeah.
as England fans. I think we can have a bit of hope going into this tournament, but of course I feel like this World Cup is different from the previous European Cups. I think there's not as much, maybe because it's a World Cup. I don't
Yeah.
think people are getting as carried away. I think maybe in a few years ago when Gareth Southgate was still head coach, I think there was still like this real belief that, yeah, definitely England going to win. That we've got this. It's coming home. I don't quite see that. I know I'm in Poland, but from what I'm seeing on the internet, via the internet, it's not like that. I think people are just say, a bit more. We'll see. I don't know if that's correct in the way I'm, receiving this information, but I just feel like because this is a World Cup, also with the fact that you mentioned this about the weather with the heat, and also what I saw, is that England are one of the nations who are going to have to fly the most.
Yes.
Where I saw that, for example, Spain and France. I think France are one of the least with the least travel with
Yeah.
distance, and that kind of could come into it. That could be coming into like a factor that could place its way into it. However, the first game is the first game, so that can't be an issue in my opinion. The heat can be, but not the travel, because I think
Yeah.
it's the same for both.
Yeah. I think the time that we've been out there and we're starting one of the later games, when I say later games, don't mean times of time of day. I'm talking about, the tournament's gone on, and the more time we spent out there, then you acclimatise. I know myself, then I was out in the States and I was working, coaching many years ago. I couldn't believe how hot it was. It wasn't just the heat, it was the humidity. So when we used to get up each day, they would say like it'd be 85 degrees, but the humidity is 85, 90%. And that would be like, oh my God. So, they've got some very um, able people out there that are supporting them. A lot of research has been done about how to cool players down, and obviously with the breaks, drinks breaks, that's imperative. So there's no excuses this time, and I don't think um, Thomas will make any excuses. But coming back to the English public, as you've correctly pointed out. Whereas every tournament we was expected to win it, we had this. We're the favourites. I think we've become more, what's the word, realistic, and because of where the World Cup is taking place, I think people are understanding that we're not the best side in the world. We've got no given right to win it, although we've got some good players. And I think, like you say, there's not so much pressure that's put on us. Yes, there's going to be a pressure from the players and the team that have gone out there, but that'll be managed internally. So they'll always want to do well, and no doubt they'll expect that they could go on and win it. And we're not saying they can't, but like I said, they'll manage that. Those particular aspirations will be managed within the camp with the psychologists, etc., etc. So there's a lot go into it. But getting back to the game, I think, like you said, for me, it's going to be a great occasion. Two good sides with a history of playing each other in various tournaments over the last 2 or 3 tournaments that we've been in. And like I said to you, the moment of truth, because I'm looking at England and it was evident that Saka and Rashford, I don't think they played any part in the build-up games, did they, over there? But what they did have, they had a behind closed doors game. So obviously the Manchester United players came in a little bit later. Manchester United players. Why am I saying Man United players? Arsenal players. And obviously Rashford being at Man United and obviously where he was playing out in Spain. So players have come over a little bit later, given the time to rest, and hopefully they would have got some minutes under their belt in that friendly. I think it was against Miami. So, lots of work would have been done there. They talked about working on the restarts, the set pieces. But my side, are you ready for it? And I don't know if you agree or not. Have you got one in mind that you think he's going to pick?
Maybe something similar to the Costa Rica game, maybe a few changes here and there.
Yeah, I
But
think what he did with that, sorry, I think he's going to mix it up between like when he had the first lot playing and he brought the other lot on. But I think that's what he's done. But sorry to interrupt you there. But yeah, so in my mind, he's going to go, if we go at the back five, obviously I'll play a back four, but we including the goalkeeper in that, he'll go with Pickford 100%, so there are some possible combinations, but I'm going to tell you what they are. But I'm going to say this is what I'm 95% sure of what he'll pick. I think he'll go with Reece James at right back. I think he will go with Ezri Konsa to start with Mark Gahey as the 2 centre halves and left back O'Reilly. I did speak to someone the other day who said no, he's adamant that he will start off with Stones and Gahey as the 2 centre halves, but I'm going for Konsa and Gahey as the 2 centre halves. But like you say, O'Reilly and James in the full back positions. What are your thoughts on that?
the goalkeeper picks himself, I think. And yeah, I think the back four, as you said, yeah, James. I think actually James isn't the worst person to choose. Actually, I think he's actually quite a, anytime he's played, like last season, I noticed that when he played, Chelsea were better. I
Yeah,
don't know why, because to be honest, I've never really rated James as one of those world class players. But maybe James is that type of player that just gets the job done, and I think that's what I noticed through this season. And he's really, he really impressed me. And I rate him even more now. Well,
yeah.
I rate him more now. You've mentioned the two, centre backs. You could be right there. But then again, someone said John Stones. You know what? I think Conser would be probably the one. Basically, probably because of, I don't know. I think there's more athleticism to Conser.
Yeah.
Probably, you know him better because you've coached him. But maybe that's the case. Gagey, I think, has to play in there, and I know Riley that those the Man City players have to be there.
Yeah, I
So
think
I
I think
definitely
there can
agree
be
with
some
that.
changes in there if we needed Conser's played at right back as well, and if you needed to put Stones on, you could have Stones and Conser at right back. But James, does get forward well. And like you said, he had some injuries. He was prone to injuries last year, but I think he's grown and he's matured into, an accomplished right back who will get forward. So moving into centre midfield, I think we'll play 4-2-3-1. I'll put Rice down and Anderson, without a shadow of a doubt. So, there'll be those two double pivots in there with the ability to, maybe morph, because they sort of did that in the previous game where Rice is able to get forward. In Arsenal, he did play as a six, a holding midfield player, but then he moved into that more advanced on the left side, going inside. So he will play to the left of the two. And if Anderson has to drop back and be that single pivot, then Rice can combine and play with whoever's in that 10 role. But like I said, this is another debate, but I think he will start with Bellingham. Possibly people have talked about Rodgers, but I think he'll go with Rice, Anderson, and Bellingham. And Bellingham being as that outright 10. Again, Bellingham can play as a 24. He can be a 6, 8, or 10. So he can sit deep, but I think he'll want to put him in that 10 role behind Harry Kane, of course. So Harry Kane will be the out and out 9. Let's hope he stays up the pitch and it doesn't drop too deep. I don't like it when he comes that deep. People have talked about coming deep, getting on the ball and playing them forward passes. Well, if Rice and Anderson can't do that, then, they shouldn't even be on the pitch. So if I was playing in one of them holding midfield players and Kane comes to get the ball off me, I would tell him in uncertain terms to get on his bike and get up the pitch. Yeah, so, although he's got that about him, and we know he can play deeper, but that's what I think we've got to do. I think he's got to stay high and occupy Croatia, whether they play a back three or back four, but certainly occupy those centre halves or central defenders. Now, coming to the wide areas, I think he's going to go with Saka on the right, although he's left-footed, cutting in, as you know. And then on the other side, it was interesting because I thought Gordon did okay, and he has got pace, but I think he'll start with Rashford. So, those players across the front 4 areas or 3 behind Kane will be Rashford on the left, Bellingham, and then Saka. So, yes, we've always got room, and Rodgers can even go and play wide, although he prefers to play in that 10 role. So that's what I'm going on. But obviously, we've got players to come on. Mainu can come in as one of those pivots if he needs to. I like him. He's very comfortable in possession. He's good in tight areas with his back to goal. He's got good energy, and we've seen him get forward as well. So that's ideal for Anderson to be able to sit in there and allow people to bomb on if we need to. So yeah, that's what I'm looking at. So that's what I'm going for the starting 11 against Croatia.
No, that's that's probable. That's more than probable. I think, there's a lot of players that you mentioned who, yeah, I mean, like Harry Kane, he's a certainty. Declan Rice, can't imagine a team without Declan Rice. Yeah. And then, yeah, some of the other Bellingham could play. I mean, I think because also Thomas Tuchel, he chooses players based on also, I think there's that feeling that who he likes as well and who he's seen, because he's chosen some of those players, I think also based on previous matches. So, yeah, I mean, as long as those players are fit, as long as they're ready, he's going to start them. I'm sure, and you could be right about the inclusion of Rashford. Although on a personal note, if it was me choosing, I'd probably go with Anthony Gordon, because I think with Rashford, yeah, he's a good player, but I just like Anthony Gordon for his directness. I think he's direct. He reminds me, Anthony Gordon, maybe without the little bit of skills that he had, but because Ryan Giggs had those little he's like that little bit of skill that when he ran. I think Gordon's more direct. Every time I see him, he seems like he's direct. He seems like he's got this idea. He wants to get a goal almost all the time, which isn't a bad thing. And
I think he wants to. Yeah, definitely.
I think that might not be bad if for example, because you said that you'd prefer Harry Kane to stay up front, as the number 9, we should want that. But then again, if playing to the player doesn't work, then sometimes you have to play through him. So you might have to come deeper, and then maybe he's a player who holds up the play a little bit, lays it off, and then a player like Anthony Gordon uh, could benefit from that, and England could benefit from that. But I do have to agree with you. I think if England play the way that we can, maybe someone can get into those positions. Maybe Reece James, for example. With a cross in the box, you
Yeah,
need someone like Harry Kane in there. So
yeah,
I feel like I think the players you've mentioned, and thinking about it, we've got a good chance. We've got a very good chance. It's just that we've got to. I think maybe in previous years also there's been a lot of talk about the expectation. What's and maybe that's played its role.
yeah,
They are human, and so players might be under extra pressure. Although you say that they should handle that, but maybe this time that fact that they're not really mentioned in. I don't think England are mentioned as favourites to win it.
yeah.
I haven't heard that. So
No,
so maybe
no.
that would work. Maybe that will work in England's favour. And in this game against Croatia, I feel it's important for England to start, strong. I think I'd like to see a very gutsy game. I'd like to
Yeah,
see a very brave game, an exciting game, and maybe there needs to be a few changes. Maybe there needs to be a player that you wouldn't really, maybe a Madueke even. I think Madueke didn't get the best reviews after the last game, if I'm
yeah,
not mistaken, but maybe it needs a player like that. Sometimes that rawity of a player
yes, yeah,
whoever it might be. Maybe sometimes you need that, but I think he's going to start the players he trusts from the
yeah,
get go, and then
yeah,
maybe if he needs someone off the bench, then yeah, because Croatia are definitely going to pose a threat. We know that they've got quality, even though they're a little bit of an aging side with some players. But that's not one of the reasons that I think they're gonna make it harder because Luka Modric, this might be his last big tournament, for
yeah,
example, and some other players you mentioned as well. So I really do hope that this is going to be a gutsy performance from England. I
yeah,
want I want to see I want to see bravery. I want to see taking risks. I know some people say play it safe, create the overload. But I'm going to be honest. For example, when I think about coaching as well, I always like to see okay, play the safe pass when you can, but sometimes take the player on. You know,
yeah.
sometimes
I
play
think
it.
I think we've
Be
got the
brave. Be
players.
brave.
Yeah, we've got the players higher up the pitch to do that. So, like you say, that first 10 minutes is really important that we play on the front foot. And hopefully, like I say, O'Reilly's becoming more and more instrumental because Rashford, being right-footed and predominantly want to come inside as Saka does. That's why we need Kane in there to combine with and Bellingham to combine with. But O'Reilly's very good at getting forward. He scored a few goals of late. He gets forward on that, on the outside of Rashford, which he'll have a lot of space to get round him on the outside because, like I say, Rashford goes in and plays narrow. But like I say, O'Reilly's a threat from set pieces. He's a big boy. I think he's about 6'2", 6'3". So aerially, he's a threat. As if we needed to bring on such people as Byrne, we've got that in our locker. But like you say, go and play with a freedom. Obviously, you've got to be a little bit structured at the start in terms of being organised, not giving nothing away. But that's what I'm going with. And then hopefully, when we talk next, or we might talk before then, we'll analyse England and how they set up and what they did from a structural point of view, and what the strategy was and the tactics were to achieve the result that we all want. Like I say, with taking Croatia into account, because whether they play a back three or whether they go over back four, it does make a difference in terms of what your roles and responsibilities are as either a fullback or a winger for England. So let's keep our fingers crossed. Hopefully we can, when we talk next, we would have got a positive result. And the results tonight, where Germany's starting in a couple of minutes, that there's been some good football played, and we can start to get a better idea and a better outlook on what teams are going to do and are expected, what in terms of are they expected to go further? Because, like I say, don't expect to see great games at the start because you never do. It's usually as the tournament progresses and we get deeper into the sort of last eight, even last 16. So let's keep our fingers crossed, not do nothing silly and give us an uphill battle and just go out and have a professional performance. And that means defending tight. If we won 1-0, great. But if we can get a couple of goals, because then I think if you can get a win under your belt after that first game, it does allow you to rest players and bring on those others. But I think there's a tendency that if you get a bit nervous that you want to play the same team, or if you get an injury, it's forced upon you. So I think if we can go out, players can put in a good 60, 75 minutes and get into a commanding sort of position, it allows you to bring on others. And I think if you can share that workload, particularly in that heat, then I think that's going to stand you in good stead as the tournament progresses and we go further on. When it's we don't want to get any 120-minute games where we're playing extra time. Not that you'll do that in the initial stages, but when you get into the last 32 and 16 and last 8, then it certainly takes its toll.
Yeah, definitely. If the weather's going to be like we think it is, we definitely don't want to be going into extra time penalties, and you name it. Just before we end, what are your predictions, your score predictions for the England Croatia game?
Oh, you put me on the spot. I'm a positive person. I think we'll win, whether it's by an odd goal or hopefully two, so we can take the pressure off. I'm always worried about conceding, but I'm going to go for a 3-1 victory. So, put me neck on the line there, mate. 3-1, and let's see how we get on.
I'm smiling and laughing because that's the exact same score I'm thinking. 3-1. For whatever reason, I do think we'll concede, but I think we'll be too strong in the end. And we'll see who scores. I imagine if we do score three, I think Harry Kane's going to be among at least one of them.
Yeah.
You never know if Bellingham plays, he might get a goal. But you've
Yes.
mentioned also Nick O'Reilly. I think he's one of those players who can also get a goal, and you never know.
Definitely.
He might end up with a goal as well. I'm not convinced with the prediction of the goal scorers, but I'm closer to home, to be honest, with the score prediction. I think England, as long as we start in a brave way, courageous way, I think we've got a chance to get some goals. I really do. But as I said, Croatia will pose a threat because they are still quality side. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of respect, mutual respect, and I'm hoping that'll be one of the better games. And yeah, let's just hope that, as you said, let's hope from an England point of view that we can come away with a win. And next time we talk, hopefully analyze it from a point of view that we won the game. This is how we did it. This is what happened. We see how the prediction of the starting 11. Right? So it goes. I think I'm close with that. With the agreement to a Euro from. Maybe with the exception of maybe I'd say maybe Anthony Gordon instead of Rashford.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think I can't see any differences that I would make really. I think you've got to go Bellingham ahead of Morgan Gibbs. Sorry, not Morgan Gibbs White, but Morgan Rogers.
Yeah.
I think for now at least to start off with, and even then I think we might see. You never know. We might see Bellingham playing in one or two roles. He might not have just one role during games. He might. You never know. We'll see. But no, looking forward to it. Looking forward to it. I'm getting more into it the more we're talking.
Yes.
Because if you remember the last time I wasn't too geared up for the World Cup, but I imagine that our chats will get me right up there, especially with England. So yeah. Well, anyway, this is about it for this episode. And yeah, I've enjoyed it. Have you enjoyed it?
Yeah, always love talking about football. And with the sun shining, I just took my glasses off, and now the sun's just come out. But yeah, it's always good to talk about football, particularly when it's sunny. And we've got many good evenings and days to look forward to over the next 6 weeks. So let's wait and see. That's all we can do now. The prep's not all done in the England cap yet. It's nearly all done. And it's just about sort of doing some maintenance. What was it? Match day minus, what day is it days? 3, was it Wednesday? Yeah. So there'll be um, working on those restarts, just ticking over, not overdoing it, but just making sure they get things right. And the mental preparation within the camp is vitally important, and the squad needs to stay together. I'm sure that he'll announce the squad to the players at least a day or two beforehand to prep them of, not being too disappointed, and where he thinks the game plan will be, that those who come on will finish it if we need to. And let's hope that it goes according to plan.
Let's hope so. Well, I've really enjoyed it. And this has been another World Cup 2026 episode on the Coach Turf podcast. I've been Coach Daniel Northeast for short. And the gentleman on the other side that I'm talking to is.
Colin Reed. So, guys, I hope you have a good weekend, and I hope you have a good week. And I look forward to talking to you the next time we get together.
Absolutely. So, yes, and if you've enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Notification to always stay up to date with everything that happens on this channel. And we hope to come back with more videos very soon. All the very best. Bye bye.
Bye, guys. Cheers.